Hi everyone, welcome to episode 17. My guest today from Sloth Brazilian Jiu Jitsu out of Euless, Texas, Josh Meredith.
It's time to high five and fist bump. A jiu-jitsu podcast for the everyday grappler. Let's talk subs. Let's talk positions. Let's talk dominating the mats. Welcome to the Let's Talk Jiu-Jitsu podcast with Raymond Terrence.
So my guest today is a 4th degree blue belt from Sloth Brazilian Jiu Jitsu out of Euless, Texas. I really hope I said that right. Josh Meredith, let's talk Jiu Jitsu, buddy.
Hey, what's up, man? How are you doing, Raymond?
Good, man.
Hey, Josh.
Hey, what's up, Brian?
Thanks for being on the show. We got this together pretty quickly. I was super happy. I know we spoke on the phone, got to talk a little bit, which was super cool. You're the first guest to actually say, hey, give me a call. Let's have a phone conversation. So I thought that was really, really good of you, man.
Yeah, man, like totally. We were messaging back and forth, and sometimes the expressions can't be done through words. So that lack of communication was there, those nonverbal cues. And I totally was like, man, let's get on the phone. Let's get this started. Let's get this set up. Let's not talk about it anymore. Let's get this thing up and rolling and going, And you did the same thing, I didn't know that I had to have a special card to call out to Canada because I tried to call you and it didn't let me call you, you know what I mean? And it was hilarious, because it was like, nope, you're not allowed to do that. So you called me in a very timely manner. And one thing led to the next, and here we are.
That's great. That's great, man. So tell everybody maybe a little bit about how you got into jiu-jitsu. I know you have a really interesting story, and I know you've been through some hard times, and so maybe start us from the beginning. I think people will be able to, some people might maybe be able to relate to your story or be super interested about your path, and maybe it'll probably help them out. So let's go all the way back to the beginning, and maybe take it to people back to when you started jiu-jitsu or how things led you to jiu-jitsu.
Okay, it's a long story, but let's go ahead and get started.
Man.
So check it out. You know what I mean? Like I started wrestling when I was 12, but to lead up to wrestling, I kind of got to talk about my childhood a little bit. I grew up with some parents that had a drug problem. You know what I mean? And the drug problem led from us moving from apartment to apartment, and the thing was back in that time, in the early 90s, cocaine was running rampant. My dad was a real bad drug addict, and my mom was dealing with a drug addict as a husband, and he was always like in and out of prison, and one thing he was famous for was he was able to steal a car radio faster than anybody in the world. Not something you really want to be famous for. Wow. But, that adversity as a child, you know what I mean, kind of made me seek attention, and not in most of the positive way you would think. So I developed into kind of like a juvenile delinquent, and my father's running in and out of prison, and my mom's just doing the best she can, man. She's a single mom with 3 kids, working 2 jobs, just to put food on the table and a roof over our head and clothes on our backs, and she's really struggling. And we're always going over to our grandparents, and I'm just acting out, you know what I'm saying? And I'm getting kicked out of schools for like stupid reasons, left and right. We end up moving. And it was kind of cool because whenever I was 5 years old, my biological father was locked up in prison, and my mom met my dad. He's not my biological father, but that's the man who took my mom under his wing, put a roof over my little sister's head, clothes on my older brother's back, and taught me the morals and characteristics that I have today. You know what I'm saying? And one of the big things he did for me was he always put me in sports. And it's crazy because I was the kid on the baseball field at 6 years old that was out in the outfield picking daisies, you know what I'm saying? And to go from that to being where I'm at now just kind of makes me laugh. And baseball wasn't.
You were like Ferdinand the Bull.
Yeah.
Picking daisies in the middle of the game. Love it.
It's hilarious. You
So
say
sorry, I
that,
didn't mean to
man.
interrupt. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
And check it out. They got me in soccer. Soccer wasn't working out. And then they started getting me into like football, and I played football for a few years as a kid. And the crazy thing was my dad. Not my biological father, but my dad, Stu. He was like, if we get this kid in sports, he's gonna be exhausted by the time he comes home. So he's not gonna run rampant whenever he comes home. He's gonna eat some food and go to bed. And he was right. You know what I mean? But I still acted out. Some stuff happened when I was a child. You know what I mean? Like I was sexually molested as a young child. And I didn't know till later in life that some of those things that happened whenever I was an adolescent would affect me through my childhood years and my teenage years, and definitely into adulthood. You know what I'm saying? But something happened whenever my parents got me into swimming. You know what I mean? And it was an individualized sport. Of course, we trained as a team. But I think I was like 10 or 11 years old when they got me into swimming, and I started winning these ribbons, man. And I was winning these ribbons left and right, and I was in sixth grade at the time, and I'm getting in fights left and right at school because I'm lying constantly to everybody. You know what I mean? Like I got all these emotions inside of me that I don't know how to deal with. So I'm telling kids like, oh, I got a dirt bike at the house and I got ATVs, whatever. I had never rode a dirt bike in my life, but a neighbor had a dirt bike and I thought that was cool. So I thought if I told other kids, that I had a dirt bike, they would think I was cool. You know what I mean? I was always seeking that attention, and I ended up getting kicked out of Wilshire Elementary, and I ended up going to another elementary school in the school district, and ended up getting in 3 or 4 fights over there in a matter of 3 or 4 weeks, and ended up getting kicked out and going to another elementary school, man. And I'm in and out of the ISS and the AEP thing, and I end up getting kicked out again, and my mom brings me home, and she homeschools me. So I'm homeschooled throughout the summer, but I got to do these tests that are run by the state. You know what I mean? So she's still got 3 kids, and my dad at this time is working like a full-time job. You know what I mean? And I end up passing the tests, and I'm going into the 7th grade, and I go to Central Junior High over there in Bedford, Texas. And the same thing happens. I end up getting in a bunch of fights, and they kicked me out of Central, and it was really hard to get me into this middle school called Harwood. Okay, and as soon as I went to Harwood, I was playing on the athletics, curriculum. So they had me in football and then track and field. And one day I was going to English class, and this old man comes out of nowhere, and he grabs me and he's like, "Hey man, you look like a wrestler." And I'm 12 years old in the 7th grade, and I'm watching WWE on the TV, trying to do the Stone Cold Steve Austin, thinking it was so cool, and that was my perception. That was my paradigm of what wrestling was. So I go home and I tell my mom, I'm like, "You won't believe this, like a teacher said I look like a wrestler, I'm a wrestler." and I guess she knew what wrestling was, but I didn't know what it was. And I ended up going to this wrestling practice, and there's people running around, and they're doing burpees and push-ups, with someone on their back, and they're doing body sit-ups, and they're taking each other down, and they're throwing each other, and I fell in love.
And then you started giving DDT on people? Pile drivers and shit, and they're like, that kind of wrestling, man.
I fell in love. Yeah, right. That's hilarious. But no, they had some really good wrestling coaches, and they had some really good high school kids, you know what I mean, that are really serious about it. And I got to see for the first time that that it was cool to fight, and people applauded you for beating other people up. And that's what I had been doing my whole childhood, was acting out and beating people up. And for the first time, someone says it's okay.
You're allowed to do it.
I am allowed to go and kick this guy's ass. It's not fun getting your ass kicked, but if you're on the other end of the stick, it's totally cool. And I guess my mom developed a problem with drugs, a substance abuse problem, whenever I was getting kicked out of all these schools. And I didn't know any better, you know what I mean? I was a kid. I didn't know what methamphetamine was. And she was doing a bunch of meth, man. And she got to a point in her life to where, you know, and I was in 7th grade. My brother was in 9th grade. And my little sister was in 5th grade. And she got to a point to where she was going to kill herself. And my dad, Stu, didn't know what to do, you know, and he calls my mom's sister, Kelly. And the crazy thing is Kelly swings over to the house and she picks up my brother, my sister, and I. My dad's like, "Thank you," you know, because my mom's off ripping and tearing, doing all sorts of shit. And my aunt calls Child Protective Services. And like I said, man, we didn't know any better as kids. So whenever Child Protective Services came to interview my brother, my sister, and I, we're like sitting there drawing pictures of bongs and bags of dope, like it was just what we saw every day.
You
You know
guys
what I'm
thought it was
saying?
normal. You thought that was normal.
That was the norm. You know, we were kids. We didn't know any better. And the case filed a state against my parents, and we got taken away. And
How old were you at the time?
my aunt and uncle, and I was 12, and my aunt and uncle end up they had like 4 kids, you know what I'm saying? So they didn't want 3 more kids in the house, so they turned us over to the state, and we get shipped off all over the place, man. You know, and I remember we go to this group home out in Garland, and my brother and my sister and I are all together, and they ship off my brother and I to South Oak Cliff, and they ship off my sister to Corsicana, and it was the first time that we were ever separated. You know, and I'm sitting there in my room, curled up in the fetal position under the sheets, crying because my little sister's not there for the first time in my life. I'm having to go through these emotions that I've never gone through before, you know, and the crazy thing is like, I didn't know what South Oak Cliff was till I started going to Ballard Story Middle School, and my brother was going to SOC. So, you know, like I'm a Caucasian male. And, you know, I'm a white guy, man, and I get stuck in a school with all black people. So I'm literally the only white kid in 8th grade in an entire school of black and Hispanics. So they pick on me hardcore. And I end up getting like, I remember I was walking to Glendale Shopping Center, and a little bit of time had passed, and I was 13. And I'm walking back from Glendale Shopping Center in South Oak Cliff, and I get jumped for the first time at 13 years old. And I'm sitting there curled up on the ground as 4 or 5, you know, high school thugs are just beating the shit out of me. And whenever they were finished beating the shit out of me, man, I got up and I ran faster than I've ever ran in my life, you know. And I run home, and I'm just right down the street. We lived about a half a mile away from Glendale Shopping Center. You know, we lived right behind the high school, South Oak Cliff High School. And I get home, and I'm running in the house, and I'm crying, and I'm scared. And I'm 13 years old, and something had just happened to me that had never happened to me before. And I never wanted to feel that way again. So the foster mom's son, her name was Miss Janet, and her son's name was Scotty. I'll never forget this, man. Scotty teaches me how to do a push-up. Man, and I literally fall in love with working out. Now, the crazy thing is I'm still getting in fights. So I end up getting kicked out of this foster home, and my brother stays in South Oak Cliff, and I get shipped out to Arlington. And it's crazy because I jump from Arlington to DeSoto to Waxahachie, and I'm switching schools because I keep getting in fights. And I end up at my grandma's in Weatherford. And this whole time, man, I'm just doing push-ups, and it was really cool because my parents were getting clean while I was moving around and bouncing around, and my parents were working a program. You know what I'm saying? They were going to these classes. They were giving clean UAs, and whenever we were at my grandparents' house, it was Christmas, and my parents bought me my first ever weight bench. And I fell in love, man. I started doing this bench press thing every single day. And I ended up benching. It was like 285 at 14, 15 years old.
You must
You know,
have
I
had
had
like a huge chest.
It was crazy, But then again, like that's all I did for 2 or 3 hours every day, Like I just worked out all day.
Hmm.
I had found this like isolation inside of myself that I really didn't understand. You know what I mean? And I found a void, like a hole I could fill with working out. And it filled that hole, and it made me feel confident, and it made me feel comfortable with who I was. And I went from that scared little weak boy to a tall, big badass who thought he knew everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We've all been there, I think.
So, yeah. Oh, it even gets worse, man. It's crazy. So I end up going back home to Euless, Texas. My brother, my sister, and I were all back home now, and it's been 2 years.
With your
So I
parents?
left in 7th grade. Yeah.
Okay.
Like my parents got clean.
They're out of rehab now, whatever, and they're good.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. The rehab shit, the CPS shit, all that stuff was just done and gone. Because they had a problem. You know what I mean? State of Texas identified that problem, and like now that I'm a parent and I have kids, like if someone came and ripped my kids away, I would stop doing whatever they told me to stop doing in order to get my kids back. And that's what they did.
How old
they
are you now, Josh? Sorry.
What's up?
How old are you now?
Oh man, I'm 25 now, so this
Okay.
is 10 years ago.
I just wanted some context because you said you had kids. How many kids do you have?
Dude, I got 3 kids, man. So I got an 8-year-old
25 and 3
stepson.
kids. Okay.
His name is Riley. I got a 2.5-year-old daughter named Penelope, and I got a 1.5-year-old son named Sawyer, and I got a beautiful fiance
That's
who's the
awesome.
most amazing woman in the world, and her name is Sarah.
That's
And she's
great.
sitting right beside you. That's why you have to say all those sweet things, isn't she?
No, she's not sitting
Okay.
gym right now. It's crazy because before the podcast, it was originally supposed to come on at 7:30. So I get to my gym at 7. I get to my dojo, like the Jiu Jitsu gym, at 7 o'clock, and I'm like, all right, what am I gonna do? So I start doing these push-ups, man, and I knock out 500 push-ups. And then Raymond messages me, man, and he's like, bro, we're gonna go on at 8 o'clock. And I was like, well, what am I gonna do for another half hour? So I start doing this ab workout. And now I'm sweating, just dripping sweat. So I got a real good workout in for the podcast.
All right, good.
She's at home with the kids. She's putting them to bed. They got an
nice.
8 o'clock.
Brian always does this, by the way. He always interrupts our guests in mid-story, and then we have to
I
go back to
apologize.
where they were.
But I think sometimes those little details, other people are thinking the same thing.
It's
They're-
true.
They're asking themselves, So
That's true. All right, so where were we? Because I'm like super into
So
this.
so I'm back home now. My parents
Right,
just
got
got
clean. Right.
Yeah, man, they got clean and they got us back, and I moved back in the house, man, and I started smoking pot. You know what I'm saying? Like it was a cool thing to do, Like, and I'm this big, beefy musclehead at this time, who's smoking weed, and it's the summer now, so all I'm doing is like smoking weed, lifting weights, and I'm going to high school the next year. You know what I'm saying? So like I'm just hanging out with friends, being a pothead. And I ended up going to Trinity High School that next year, and Trinity was real big on football. Okay, and I wanted to be a Trinity football player, so I go in there, and at this point, my hair is down my back. I grow my hair out for like 2.5 years while I was in foster care, and I just look like a pothead. And I go to the football team, and even though I'm 6'3", 230 pounds at this time. They say, you didn't go to summer practice. You're not going to be on the football team. And I immediately develop a reservation and a resentment towards this football team that would play a big part in my story. Because my senior year, I was a crazy badass wrestler. And my football team wanted me to be on the football team. And I just basically said, fuck you. You didn't want me my sophomore year. You're not getting me now. And the crazy thing is they tell me I can't play football and I got to pick a sport, And I was like, man, I really liked that wrestling thing back whenever I was 12. It was only like 2.5 years ago. So I signed up for the wrestling team, and I end up working out with the wrestling team and end up beating the guy who was a 171-pound varsity wrestler and taking his spot in a month. Because I had been doing push-ups and lifting weights for 3 years. You know what I mean? So I ended up getting this varsity wrestling spot my sophomore year. And I don't know how to wrestle. I just know how to fight at this point. They're teaching me high crotches. They're teaching me double legs. They're teaching me ankle picks. They're teaching me lat drops, all sorts of stuff that everyone who's ever wrestled knows. And I go I go into these tournaments and these duels. And what do, man? I start getting cautions and fouls left and right. And even though I'm whooping these guys' ass, I end up losing all these matches my sophomore years for like locking my hands while I'm on top and all this other weird stuff. You know what I mean? And the collegiate season ends up wrapping up my sophomore year. And, I'm still smoking pot this whole time. Just being a pothead. I guess it was just acceptable for my moral being.
Okay.
And my sophomore year, I ended up wrestling freestyle and Greco. And the cool thing is there's not as many rules in freestyle and Greco as there is in collegiate. So I started doing really good in freestyle and Greco. And one day my brother comes back home whenever we're sitting at the house, and he's in like workout gear. He's wearing like shorts and stuff, and he's got boxing gloves. And I was like, "What were you doing, man?" And he was like, "Dude, I'm training MMA." Like I can't let my little brother kick my ass. So what do, man? I go up to this MMA gym. It's Chris Collins MMA. He's not around anymore. Mr. Chris Collins. He was a professional kickbox fighter with a badass record. He was a professional MMA fighter, done multiple jiu-jitsu tournaments, but he ended up having like a heart attack or a stroke.
Oh no.
Back in like 2012 and 2000.
He was young, or?
Yeah, man, he was pretty young, That's why I don't really cut weight anymore. Because they say that's really bad for your heart. But yeah, he ends up having a heart attack. But that's a whole nother story. So we're at Chris Collins Mixed Martial Arts, you know what I mean? And I'm training karate, and I'm doing the wrestling classes, and I'm doing these jiu-jitsu classes, and I'm wrestling freestyle and Greco for Trinity. And the crazy thing is, man, is there's all these fighters up there, and it was a small gym. It was about maybe 15 to 25 people that trained there. And there's this grown-ass man who's like 6 foot tall, 270 pounds. And Chris picks me to be a sparring partner. This dude, he's a grown man, and I'm 15, and I go out there and whoop his ass. You know what I mean? Like front kicks, just jabs, you know what I mean? Like left hooks. And I realized something right then, that I had a talent that I could really pursue. So I end up going back my junior year. My junior year, I do really good. And that junior year summer, I go back and train a little bit of jiu-jitsu. And they only did no-gi at Chris Collins Mixed Martial Arts. You know what I mean? So this was really my first experience with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But all I ever did was wrestle people in Jiu-Jitsu at this age. At 15 and 16 years old, all I ever did was wrestle people and put them on their back. And then I figured out what a Kimura was, and it was my favorite submission in the world. And I hit a Kimura on everyone. You've probably been there where you got a wrestler that comes into your gym and just Kimuras you.
I'm telling you, well, I have to say, with the experience with wrestlers, yeah, definitely. Whenever we get them in, they definitely don't like to be put on their backs, and then they lose all control when they're on their back and have no idea what to do. If they're on top, they're good to go, but if they're on the back, they seem a little lost. But the second you teach them a little something from off their back, you're in trouble.
Yeah. So, which is also why I think I'm a really good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner now, is because I was a phenomenal wrestler who learned how to play guard. So fast forward to my senior year, I got this girlfriend now, and I'm wrestling. And it's cool because my first 30 matches, I ended up going 29-1. I lost the third match of the season, but I'm 29-1 with 27 pins, and everyone in the entire school knows my name. You know what I mean? So I walk down the hallway and everyone's like, "What's up, Josh?" You know what I'm saying? "What's up, man? What's up, man?" And I don't know 9 out of 10 of these people. You know what I mean? I'm popular. I'm famous. I have this popularity, and I end up going throughout the senior year, finishing with a record of 47 wins and 5 losses. with over 40 pins. I don't remember the exact number, but it's like 41 or 42 pins out of 45 wins. So I was amazing,
Wow.
you know. And it's crazy because I end up graduating and going to college the next day. So we graduate on like a Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, and I start these summer semesters at the local community college down the street. And I'm going there with my girlfriend at the time. And at this point, I had transitioned over to another gym down the street. I'm making the choice not to reference that gym because some bad stuff had happened there, and I don't want to.
Yeah,
I
no
don't want to
problem.
kind of be a dick about anything to anyone.
Well, then, if you
Have their
don't mention
name all over the internet. You know what I'm saying?
if you don't mention their name, you have to tell us the bad stuff, or you tell us the name, you don't tell us the bad stuff.
So I'm training 2 days, and I'm going to college all day long, and the crazy thing was I was really good at wrestling, and I had some no-gi experience, and you know what I mean? I did Taekwondo as a kid whenever my dad was trying to figure out what sport would be right for me before I found wrestling. And, I was doing karate at Chris Collins Martial Arts. So I go to this MMA gym down the street, and they got these no-gi classes and these Muay Thai classes. And I don't know if y'all have ever had wrestling experience, but in wrestling, it's like you go 110%, 90 miles an hour. You know what I mean? It's like
All the
life or
time.
death
Yeah.
all the time. You know what I
One
mean? I
speed.
didn't understand like flow rolling, or if you're better than somebody, let them get in a good spot and work out. I didn't understand those concepts yet. So I go in this gym and I end up just blowing through people, and I'm hurting people left and right. I'm going to college. And at this point, I'm not just smoking weed anymore, man. Like I'm drinking a little bit. I'm kind of partying, school's over. I'm a college kid now. And I'm still like, at this point, I'm 17, 18 years old. And I end up putting on the gi one day, and I'll never forget it. There was a bunch of guys in there. There was Eric Lincoln, who's a black belt now. There was Hayward Joshua Charles. There was Dennis Kelly Thomas. There was the dude who owns the gym. And there was like a couple other blue belts and purple belts. And these three purple belts, Dennis, Eric, and Hayward, literally choked me out like 35 times, like if not more, the first time I ever put on the gi. So I hated the gi, man. Literally, like I hated it with a passion, because I would hold my own against these like purple and brown belts in no gi. You know what I mean? With like
Sure.
barely any Jiu Jitsu experience. You know what I'm saying? But as soon as I put on that damn kimono, they were like doing loop chokes and X chokes, and they were like playing spider guard. You know what I mean? This was before the whole worm guard era, so they were just doing like De La Riva sweeps and all sort. And I'm getting thrown all over the place by a guy who's 130 pounds, and at this point I'm like 180, so it's just embarrassing. And I don't train gi again from the age of like 18 until I was 23, um, which is a long time. So I end up going to school for 2 summer semesters with my girlfriend, and I start the fall semester, and I end up getting a job at a pizza joint, delivering pizza down the street from my house, just to make some extra money. So I stopped going to the gym as much, you know what I mean? And I start, working, getting a job. And whenever I'm working and getting a job, I'm like, if I start selling a little bit of pot, I could smoke for free. And one thing led to the next. And about a year went by, and at this point I'm going to, like the Muay Thai and the no-gi classes maybe 2 or 3 days a week. And I forgot to mention that whenever I graduated high school, that popularity I had of walking down the hall had left. Like nobody knew my name anymore. I wasn't a big badass, you know what I'm saying? So I had to figure out a way, like psychologically, for me to be the top dog again. And psychologically, I didn't understand this before I went through it, but selling drugs was making me popular again because people wanted what I had, you know? So I'm selling pot at this point, and I end up moving up, you know, from like an ounce to 2 ounces, you know, and then I'm buying like a quarter pound, and then, you know, I'm buying like a half pound, and then I'm buying like a whole pound, you know what I'm saying? And then I'm buying, you know, 2 to 3 pounds, and then I'm buying like 3 to 5 pounds.
That's a lot
And
of
my
weed.
coach,
That's a hell of a lot of weed.
yeah, this is all like hydroponic, high grade, you know, top of the line weed, man. And anyone can do it. You know what I mean? It's just, it's a slippery slope. And I didn't understand what a slippery slope meant until I got into like harder drugs, you know? And I'm a firm believer in this. Like, I don't think that marijuana is a gateway drug. I think that the people associated with marijuana will lead you to people who are associated with other drugs,
Yes.
and the relationships you develop between like your little cliques.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. It's definitely not. I mean, if you're strong minded, I think that, you know, if you're someone who smokes weed on a regular basis, I don't think it will necessarily bring you to harder things. This is just from a personal belief.
I believe that too.
Yeah, and just from personal experience.
I don't think there's anything wrong.
Yeah,
But
I was a big pothead.
Go ahead.
No, sorry. Yeah, I was just to kind of throw it out there. I smoked a lot of weed. I would say from my early 20s until my late 20s. So, but what I mean a lot of weed, I mean like a lot of weed. I smoked in the morning when I woke up, and then after that, maybe around 10 o'clock, I would smoke again right after breakfast, and then lunchtime would come around, and I would smoke again, play some more video games, probably smoke again around 3 p.m. 5 o'clock would come around, got a smoke before supper, and then we'd play video games till 3 o'clock in the morning, and we would just continuously smoke. And mostly because I lived with somebody, my roommate was selling weed at the time. And I remember he would, once a week, we would go in the middle of a cornfield. And at the time I was in my early 20s, and I grew up in a very small suburban community. And when I moved out, I had no idea what anything was. I was so sheltered as a kid that the second that this guy brought me in the middle of nowhere, I couldn't even tell you where this middle of nowhere was. All I knew is I was standing in the middle of a cornfield with my roommate, and this guy would show up in a tractor in the middle of the night with these giant lights, and he would give him a giant garbage bag, like just a normal green garbage bag, full of weed. But it wasn't like individually wrapped. It was literally just full of marijuana.
Just recently cultivated.
Yes, and we would go onto the subway with it, thinking that, and it never crossed our mind that anyone would smell it or smell us, and we would get busted. At the time, there was none of that security in the subway. And we would go right on the subway, get off at Vondo Metro, and we would go directly to our apartment. And he would continue selling, I would continue smoking, and then we just kind of left it at that. But when I say I smoked a lot of weed, I mean I smoked a lot of weed. I think a lot of people don't know that. And eventually it just kind of like faded away. I moved, I guess, I don't know if I want to say I matured. I don't think I matured. I think I just moved on to something else. I found something else to kind of keep me busy.
Yeah.
Just throwing it out there to interrupt you, because Brian normally interrupts you. So I thought, I thought it would be a good time to do it.
Now that Ray so rudely interrupted you, I think you were saying you started getting into some bigger drugs and started drinking. I think that's where you left off.
Yeah. You know what I mean? As I'm like drinking and partying and smoking and training and delivering pizza at this pizza place and going to college, I end up starting to do these things called Xanax. You know what I mean? And it's crazy because my coach at the time, my Muay Thai coach, had lined up a fight at a local casino for me, because at this point I'm just murdering people. You know what I mean? Like, I had the opportunity to train with UFC fighter James Vicks. You know what I mean? Like, I'm training with like purple belts and brown belts constantly in Nogi. You know what I mean? Like, I was ready to go whoop this guy's ass. And I take this thing called a Xanax. and it fucks my world up, and like I said, man, I'm selling like 3 to 5 pounds a week at this time. And, I'm constantly going all over the place, just selling pot, having people come over and buy pot. And I get hooked on these Xanax. I get hooked on these things real bad. And it got to the point to where I was just smoking and drinking and doing these Xanax. And it's crazy because at the same time, I'm still like going to the gym and working out. And one morning, I go to the gym to go work out, and we do a no-gi jiu-jitsu class for like an hour and a half. And then we're doing just boxing. So my training was to do 10 3-minute rounds with 30-second breaks. And in between each 30-second breaks, I had to do 25 push-ups. And each 3 rounds, I had a new partner come in. So I get about 9 rounds in, or I get about 6 rounds in, and this guy that I've never seen before walks into the gym. And goes to the locker room, puts his bags on, and I'm doing like 50% sparring with these people at this time, because this is cardio, this is strength and conditioning, this is how you get ready for a war. And and this stocky Mexican guy who's about 5'9", 230, maybe 225 pounds, jumps in the ring for the last 3 rounds, and I don't know any better, so I go in there and start sparring with him. And his weave game, like his boxing skills were on point. And he starts dipping and weaving and moving left and right and avoiding every single one of my punches. And before I knew it, I'm getting lit up, man. I'm getting lit up left and right. And I probably, in those 3-minute rounds, I probably walked into 150 strikes. Like I got my ass whooped by that guy. And that day, as soon as I left, or as soon as I got out of the ring, the head coach of the gym calls me in the ring, or calls me into his office. And he proceeded to tell me that, and he had told me 2 or 3 times before, but I didn't really take it serious. And what I mean by he had told me is like I was beating people up and I was hurting people. And he told me, hey man, like you can't hurt people. You know what I mean? Just go easy with them. And I guess I had hurt the wrong person. So he brings me into the gym, or he brings me into his office, and he sits me down and he said, Josh, like, you can't train here anymore. You're hurting my students. This business is how I make a living. This is how I put a roof over my family's head, and you're not allowed to train here anymore. So I end up getting my stuff together, packing my bag, end up going back home, staying at my parents' house. And mentally, that really affected me. And I wanted to drown out the sounds of regret and sorrow and remorse and anger and fear and anxiety that I had inside of me. So I ended up taking a shitload of those Xanax. And
then
at this point,
things probably went horribly wrong from that point on.
Oh man, it went bad. And like
sorry,
I'm taking Xanax.
Sorry to interrupt you again, Josh. You said you took a shitload of Xanax, like at all at once. Like, did you try to kill yourself? Is that what you're saying?
No, I didn't try and kill myself.
I don't know. Can you kill yourself?
What I mean by taking a shitload of Xanax, I was eating like 2 milligrams Xanax every day for like 30 days. Yeah, it got to the point to where I was a zombie. You know what I mean? Like, like I was eating a lot of Xanax, and I started wrecking cars because at this point, like I'm selling drugs, so I bought a bunch of shit, and I'll never forget this, man. I bought 500 Valium, and at this point, I got a backpack full of drugs. I think I bought a half pound of shrooms, and they came in 2 Walmart grocery bags. And I'm selling shrooms, I'm selling, like lean, I'm selling these Xanax, and I buy 500 Valiums, and I end up getting real fucked up before work one day, off these Xanax, and I was drinking. I ended up passing out, and I was supposed to meet up with a bunch of people, to sell them some pot. And my phone's ringing off the hook, and my mom walks in and finds my backpack full of dope. You know what I mean? Like I got grocery bags of shrooms and 500 Valium, and I got like, 3 or 4 pounds of like medical marijuana. You know what I mean? and I ended up going to rehab. You know what I mean? Sorry, I just had to take a drink. My mouth's real bad.
Where did you go to rehab?
I went to Grapevine Valley Hope in Grapevine, Texas. And whenever I got out of Grapevine Valley Hope, well, crazy thing is like I was so fucked up whenever they tried to take me to Grapevine Valley Hope. Like I was trying to fight people. I was telling them I was an MMA fighter. And, like I don't remember this. They tell me this, whenever I get back over there, that they send me to a detox center at Springwood out of Texas Health Harris Methodist Hospital. And I'm at Springwood for like 4 or 5 days. And I'm coming down hard, man. I mean, like I'm detoxing off of alcohol, off of Xanax. I don't think detoxing off pot's bad, but whenever you're taking, 60 Xanax every other week, you got a dependency. You got a chemical buildup in your body, and you start going through these withdrawals. And I end up getting alone in the room with the psychiatrist, and I'm just tripping. And I start this thing called doctor shopping. And I start doctor shopping with this lady, which is like over exaggerating the severity of what you were going through. And I'm not really proud that I did that, but I talked this doctor into giving me a lot of drugs that I really didn't need. So on day 4 or 5, they said, I was good to go. My mom and my pops come to pick me up, and I end up getting picked up by them. And they take me back to that Grapevine Valley Hope place. And at this time, I'm like yelling and screaming in the back of the car. And I think I'm 19 years old. Like I'm a grown man, but I wasn't a grown man.
No.
Makes sense.
Grown man,
like I was
body,
a child.
mind of a child.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's a grown man at 19 years old.
Of course not.
Well, depending on your perception or paradigm, like some people might be a grown ass man. You know what I'm saying? But that'll get me off on another tangent. A philosophical point of views, and we don't have time for that. So, so I end up going to this 30-day treatment center, Grapevine Valley Hope in Grapevine, Texas, and it was kind of cool, man. You know what I mean? Like for the first time in a long time, I hadn't used drugs in 3 or 4 days, and I was able to talk to someone about something else besides, fucking drugs. And one thing leads to the next, and I start going to these meetings. So I start feeling comfortable around people. And what do? I end up hooking up with a chick and getting caught in a smush bush and almost getting kicked out of rehab.
What the fuck is a smush bush?
I don't know. That was the nickname for it, man. It was the smush bush. You know what I'm saying? Like, and my counselor sits me down and she's like, Josh, you got to take this thing serious. This whole fraternizing. I think that was the word she used. It's unacceptable. You can get kicked out. You're doing so good. You're passing all your drug tests. And so I end up graduating this program, and I end up saying what everyone says at the podium. Whenever you're graduating, telling everyone, hey, man, I got 30 days clean. I end up saying, I'm never going to use again.
Hey, Josh, I have a quick question for you. Just because I have no idea, especially we're in Canada, so maybe the programs might be a little bit different. When you do leave these programs, do they encourage you? They obviously, I'm assuming they try to encourage you not to end up or go back into the same situation you were in before.
Yeah,
so
hanging out with the same people.
Yeah, with the same people.
Yeah. So they do, man. They end up telling me I need to do this thing called an IOP program, which is an intensive outpatient program, and they're telling me, that it's going to be completely free. Insurance is going to pay for it. But I had a reservation to go use. You know what I mean? Like I still wanted to go use, even though I didn't know I wanted to go use. Just by like, now that I can look back on it and write down and look at these things on paper, I can understand what was going through my head. But, I just talked myself into saying that I didn't need it. And they recommend that you go to, 90 meetings, 90 days. You know what I mean? They recommend you get a sponsor, you work your steps. So I end up graduating with like 29 or 30 days clean. And I end up going to these meetings, these recovery meetings. for, like the principle of anonymity, I choose not to say what meetings they are and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
But I end up going to these meetings, and man, I'm going to like 2 or 3 meetings a day, and it's like fire. I end up learning how to articulate lingo, so I'm sounding really cool, and I got like 40 days clean, and I'm on top of the world, and you need to do this, and you need to do that. And on day 56, I went to the 6 o'clock meeting, I went to the 8 o'clock meeting, and I ended up leaving the 8 o'clock meeting. And I don't know why I left the 8 o'clock meeting, because I usually stay for the 10 o'clock meeting. But whenever I leave, man, I thought it'd be a real good idea to go tell one of my buddies how good I was doing. So I ended up driving over to one of my buddies' house and trying to tell him how good I was doing. And I ended up getting high. So what happens after I get high? After 56 days clean, I don't go back to any more fucking meetings. You know what I mean? And I start selling drugs again.
Was that the first time you saw that friend since you'd been clean?
Yeah, that was the first time I saw that friend. But the thing is like, in the recovery programs, they tell you to build a support group. But I wanted to be like a big fish in a small pond. I wanted everyone to know my name, but I didn't want to develop any intimate relationships. So I tried to have 100 friends instead of having like 2 real friends.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I didn't tell anybody I was going to see this guy. Like I knew what I was talking about. You know what I mean? Like, you don't understand all those concepts. Like they call them like relapse mode. Like I was in relapse mode. I didn't know it. I ended up going over to his house and ended up getting high, and I ended up start selling drugs again. And I'm selling drugs one day, and I end up going over to this chick's house who I sold to tons of times, and they're sitting there smoking a bunch, like a bowl of meth out of this thing called a bolo. And I got interested. And I didn't get interested in smoking meth. I got interested in selling meth. Because I was like, well, if these fuckers smoke meth, how many other people smoke meth? So I ended up buying a half ounce of meth the first time I've ever bought meth. Not understanding that that's like a felony charge, you know what I'm saying? Like crazy consequences, you know what I mean? Like I don't understand the consequences of what I'm doing while I'm doing all this stuff until like I finally get clean. And that's the insanity of like the disease of addiction. Like it made us get down to like an animalistic point.
So when you walked in and you saw that meth and you decided to buy some right then and there, did you
check it out?
Sorry, I just have one, I just wanted to, that was to lead into a question. Did you think about the past? Did you think about your mom? Like with that was, I think it's what you said, what she was on, right? At some point?
Yeah, she got real bad on that shit.
So did that enter your mind at that moment?
Probably not. I'm assuming
no. No, because I'm going over there and I'm selling like an ounce of pot. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And because I picked back up right where I left off. Buying pills, buying pot, going partying. You know what I'm saying? I picked right back up where I left off. And I go over there and I go sell it to him, you know what I mean? And I'm over in the corner rolling a blunt, I'm breaking open this swisher, breaking down this weed. And all of a sudden they just bust it out like it's nothing. And they just start smoking it.
And I kind of understand what you mean, Pat, that you kind of just ended up there and you moved on and there wasn't much thought about it. Because, again, to be honest, I've known Brian for a couple years now, but I don't know much about his childhood and this and that. But I know that from me, I mean, I did a lot of like when I say stupid things, I did a lot of stupid things in my 20s that I know a lot of other people in their 20s would have never done. And I did them in my 20s, not even thinking of a consequence. You know what I mean? Like not even thinking that something bad was going to happen me, that I could have gotten arrested or that, I could have died or it never crossed my mind. So I don't know if I was weak-minded in my early 20s.
No, I think you said you were sheltered a bit, right? I think it was just delayed because I did that when I was between 15 and 22, 21.
Okay.
And I kind of grew out of it. My dad was in business. I was like thrown into like more responsible kind of, position for a 21-year-old. So I did all the stupid shit. I didn't do that much stupid shit, but the stupid shit I did was between 15 and 20, probably more.
Okay, so me, it was just
I think
delayed.
it was just delayed, yeah.
Okay, so I could kind of follow you, Josh, on this.
Yeah.
The whole like,
yeah, it really did. It's crazy because, like you had said, you did all that stuff in between 15 and 20, but you know what I mean? From 14 to 19, whenever I got kicked out of that mixed martial arts gym, which I choose not to reference the name, just because I just talked a bunch of shit.
The gym that shall not be named.
Yeah, the gym that's not going to be named. So
Jim Voldemort.
So
Sorry,
I didn't do that kind of stuff because I was just training a bunch, man. So, like whenever I figured out people would know my name and I would be popular again if I started selling drugs, led me down a really bad path. Like I wanted everyone to know who I was, So I ended up buying some meth and start selling some meth. And what happens whenever you start buying and selling meth? You end up doing that. And I'll never forget the first time I did meth, man. Like, I had one of my buddies over and I showed him. We're hanging out all the time now, you know what I'm saying? And I'm not going to say his name, for like incriminating reasons. Like I don't have the right to bring him into this, but we end up, I had to sort it out. He's
we can call him Bob.
Yeah, let's call him Bob. So I end up pulling this bag of dope out in front of Bob. He's like, bro, let's do some of that shit. I was like, all right, let's do some of that shit. So we ended up crushing it down, snorting it, and going to a strip club and blowing about $1,000. And I had probably the best night of my life that in my opinion, that I'd ever had. Because now I'm just fucking tweaking and rolling, and I'm high as fuck. And I can keep a boner for like an hour and a half. You know what I'm saying? And I ended up getting addicted to meth, man. And it's crazy because I was a drug dealer, who became his own best customer. Because whenever I started doing meth, something happened to where, and selling drugs is just simple math. It's simple math. It's addition and subtraction. And that's all it is. Like if you buy something and sell it for more than you got it for, you can buy more and sell it for more than you bought it for, and on and on and on and on and on. But whenever I started tweaking my balls off this meth, man, and by the way, I had to learn how to smoke it from somebody. So I went back to the house where I sold it, whenever I was selling them some more, and I was like, hey man, teach me how to smoke that shit. So I ended up getting real bad on this meth and losing all, I guess you would call them like coping skills or just normal human functions. You know what I mean? Like I'm staying up for 3, 4, 5 days at a time. I went from 210 pounds down to 163 pounds. And I ended up losing like all my fucking money. You know what I'm saying? That I'd saved up. I remember at one point I had like $13,000 in $100 bills because every single $100 bill that I had, I saved and rolled up and put it in a pair of boxing gloves that I set in the top corner of my room.
Did you have any friends at this point, Joshua? Like people that were close to you?
Well, check it out. Like I didn't care about friends. I just had a bunch of acquaintances, and I had $13,000 to blow. So all the junkies are wanting to hang out with me, man, because I got dope and I got money. Like all family and all relationships that I had developed to the point of intimacy had went out the window when I started doing ice.
So I two quick questions. One, I'm trying to get a timeline here. So you were what, like maybe 19 or 20 at this point, or 20, 21?
I probably just turned 20.
Okay, and where were your parents at this point when you got on meth?
Well, my dad's working like 75 hours a week. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But whenever I was doing meth, man, like I wasn't at the house.
Right. Was your mom suspecting anything, or she was clean at this point, right?
Yeah, she was clean at this point. It was kind of that point in my life to where I didn't give a fuck what my parents said, and I was going to do what I wanted to do and just didn't care of the consequences, even though I didn't understand the consequences. But it got to a point to where I'm broke and I'm back at my parents' house, and I'm a meth head, you know what I'm saying? And I'm tweaking my balls out. I'm window peeking. You know what I'm saying? I'm doing all these tweaker functions. If you've ever known a tweaker, you understand what I'm talking about. And I end up getting to this point of what they called drug-induced psychosis. I'm talking to myself. I'm walking down the street, talking to myself, having full conversations with myself. I'm hearing voices. I'm seeing shit, and I'm scaring people left and right. You know. So I end up going to someone who had owed me some money, because at this point I'm broke, and he didn't have the money that he owed me, and I'm I'm tweaking. So I scare the guy, and he ends up giving me like 100 Xanax to pay his debt. So I end up going to this hotel room. And there's this chick there, there's this guy there, you know what I'm saying? And I got 100 Xanax. I'm tweaking my balls off, and at this point, like, I'm coming down real hard off of meth. And at this point, I kind of like reflect and look back on my life. And I'm like, man, I fucked up. And I just start talking about, like suicide. And I'm like, man, I just want to eat like all 100 of these Xanax and like never wake up again. And the guy sitting in the room was like, bro, I got something for you. And that was the first time I ever did heroin. And after he shot me up, I ended up falling asleep for like 12 or 13 hours, and I switched like drugs of choice. So I went from being like a tweaker to a heroin addict. And I ended up going to another rehab. So what happens is, like, I end up getting this abscess on my arm, right at the crook of my elbow. And I still have a scar there today. And
at the injection point, I guess.
Yeah. Something went wrong, and it had developed into, I forgot what they called it. It was like it was just a huge abscess on my arm. So I ended up going to the hospital, and they cut it open, and I'm just all on I'm tweaked out. I'm doing heroin at this point. Like the 7-panel drug test is found for like 4 or 5 different things, and my parents ended up coming up to the hospital, and at this point I'm put on like bed arrest at Harris Methodist Hospital in Euless, Texas. And they ended up trying to send me to a couple rehabs. And I end up talking to people at the rehabs into letting me stay. So what I thought was a bright idea was getting someone to drop off some dope at the hospital for me. So, and this is how bad it got, you know what I mean? Like, at this point, I'm doing like nasty things with nasty people in nasty places, like things I never thought I was going to do. Like, Brian, have you ever looked at somebody sideways just because they're like a fucking junkie or a drug addict? They're like, man, I'll never do it.
Sideways, not judgmental. I think wonder, curiosity.
Yeah, I would say I've been in the same boat. I here in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, I would say if you go down to what we call Old Montreal, there's a lot of homeless people there just due to the fact that there's a shelter there that takes them in. And I have to say, every time that I do drive down there, or I see someone at a corner of a street or this and that, it's more wonder of how did you get to that point? What
is the story?
What is the story?
Me too.
Yeah.
But that's always been my thing. I'm always curious about people's stories and how they got to where they are. Why are they acting that way right now? Is it mental health? Is it a some kind of because of the life?
It's a variety of diseases,
sure,
man.
It could be a lot of different reasons.
You got all sorts of stuff from schizophrenia to psychosis to PTSD. They're diseases, man, and it's a real big problem, and people don't recognize it for that, because for the longest time I thought like there was this thing called willpower. You could just make a decision and things would change. Yeah. I didn't understand, like, I had suffered with the disease of addiction, and I got to a point in my life where I was doing things I never thought I was going to do. You know what I mean? Like, I was prostituting myself out to like nasty women that you would never in your wildest dreams have sex with. Like, I'm talking about like nasty, old, disgusting women.
Brian Wood. I'm just kidding.
You know, like I was doing some nasty stuff.
Actually, you know what I have to do, Josh? Every single podcast, we actually talk about this guy called Professor Phil. He's he's one of our professors. He's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and we've had him on the podcast. And I have to say that maybe Professor Phil, maybe Professor Phil also might have eventually slept with one of those women that you're speaking about.
100%.
So
before his current wife, of course.
Before his current wife, we have to bash him just a little bit every podcast, so you can now continue with your story. Thank you.
Okay. So that's hilarious. Because I would like, if I was like right now, I don't even understand how I got there. You know what I mean? But you know, things happen the way they happen.
It's funny. And there's well, it's not funny, but I mean, it seems there's a correlation between people that have addictive issues, and people that want to be the center of attention. Like you mentioned a few times where, you loved it when everybody knew your name and, everybody was saying hi to you and you were the man and you were famous. And then, I hear a lot of times stories, people like that. And then, their addiction stories or something, like that. Do you think that way, Josh?
Yeah, I believe 100% that's exactly what happened. So we've been going for about an hour. Let me fast forward this track. I'm in this hospital getting my arm cut open. I end up getting shipped down to Houston to a rehab, but this time it's a 60-day rehab. I end up getting 60 days clean. I come back home, but my parents are like, no, you're not coming home. You're going to a halfway house. So I end up living in this halfway house. And I end up walking up to a liquor store one day, because so check it out. Whenever I was at that halfway house, I came home for a picnic with my mom one day and ended up seeing this little pipe I'd set on my brother's toolbox 2 months earlier in the exact same spot. And I got curious and opened up that little bitty pipe, and there was pot still in it, exactly where I left it. And I hit it and got high after like 65 days clean. And I ended up going back to the halfway house, and I'm high, and I ended up walking up to the liquor store and getting like a little bottle of scotch, and ended up drinking it on the way back home because I was supposed to be looking for a job. And they end up, making me piss in a cup because they're all clean, you know what I'm saying? And I'm getting fucked up again. And I end up getting kicked out of the halfway house. I'm back at my parents' house. And at this time, like, I ain't got no money, no friends. So I'm out there like panhandling, doing all I can do. And remember, like, I was a big baller at one point. Like, I'd sold a bunch of drugs. So I ended up going to some of these people's houses who I'd sold a bunch of drugs to and hooked up a bunch. And one of my old homies let me get high for free, man. He'd give me like 10 cents of dope to get free. So I'm end up doing the deal for about 2 or 3 more months. And something happened. So I ended up going to these recovery meetings again. And whenever I'm going to these recovery meetings, I'm still getting high, but these people were telling me something that nobody else was telling me. They were telling me, like, please keep coming back. You know what I mean? Like you can do this. You know what I mean? Like, you can get clean too. Anyone can get clean. And one day I'm at my mom's house, and it was after a really bad night, and I end up getting in an argument with her, and I end up walking out the house. And in my mind, I want to go to a meeting. You know what I mean? I'm going to go to these recovery meetings. There's a meeting down the street at noon. And as I'm walking down this Highway 10 in Euless, Texas, the thought of going and getting high gets in my head. I'm like, I know if I go here, he's got 10 cents. I can go do it over there. He's got clean rigs. You know what I mean? Like, I can go over there and get high for free. And I turn my head and I see this sign that says, live life sober. And it's called The Right Step. Walking down Highway 10. And I end up telling myself, I'm going to get clean. And I end up walking up to the rehab. And at this point, I'm like smoking cigarettes. And I'm smoking cigarettes on the front porch of this rehab, thinking they're not going to let me in with my cigarettes. So I'm smoking 2 cigarettes. I walk up to the desk. And at this point, I'm 22 years old. I'm 23. I just turned 23. It was July 27th of 2015, and I asked this lady at the desk, I was like, "You have a bed?" And she's like, "Yeah, I do. Do you have your driver's license and insurance?" And I did. I had a copy of my driver's license and insurance.
Thank
I
God.
said, "Oh, thank God!" Right? You know what I mean? These places ain't cheap, man. About $30,000 a month. So I end up sitting down, and the lady comes and asks me if I was hungry, and I was like, "I'm starving." So she goes and gets me some food, and I end up like eating this hamburger and French fries in like 3 or 4 bites. At this point, I'm like 165 pounds, and right now I weigh like 205 or 210. You know what I mean? Like I was really, like nutritionally deprived. You know what I mean? I put my body through a lot of drug abuse. And I'm scarfing down this hamburger, and she comes out to me and she tells me the craziest news in the world. She's like, "Joshua, this rehab is going to be 100% free. It looks like you went to rehab earlier in this year, and you're not going to have to pay a dime." And I start crying, like just tears of joy, because I was like sick and tired of being sick and tired of the person I had become. And the light bulb had clicked. And at that point in my life, because whenever I went to rehab previously, it was always my parents that took me to rehab. This time, like, I was walking down the highway. I didn't want to get high. I looked over to my left. There was a rehab. And that was God, bro. That was God that put me down that path, because there was 3 or 4 other ways to walk, but I walked that way for a reason. And I got clean on July 27th of 2015. And I've been clean ever since.
That's great, man.
Yeah.
Yeah,
4
yeah.
years this
Yeah,
July. Nice.
That's freaking amazing, man. It really is. Like, not a lot of people get to come back from that.
So at what point in time did you find jiu-jitsu?
So check it out. I get about like 3 or 4 months clean, and so I went to that rehab, and I ended up doing like a 90-day program. So I went to that rehab for 30 days, and then I went to go live at the Salvation Army Adult Rehabilitation Center in Fort Worth, Texas, off Northeast 28th Street for like 30 more days. And then I went back to that rehab called the Right Step and did the intensive outpatient program for another 30 days. And I ended up doing this program called Javelin, where I took a drug test every week for an entire year through that program. So I got about like 3 or 4 months now. And I meet up with one of my old college wrestling buddies on I forgot where we meet up, bro, but we start going to these open mats. You know what I mean? And at this point, like, I knew where the open mats were. I knew the open mats were at Genesis Jiu Jitsu every Thursday at noon. They were at Genesis Jiu Jitsu every Sunday at 8:30 a.m. They were at Snow Mixed Martial Arts in Keller at 7 o'clock on Friday night. So we're going to like 2 or 3 open mats every week, and we're just wrestling people, you know what I mean? And at this point, like, at the open mats, people are like, "Hey, man, why don't you try and play this thing called guard?" And I'm like, "Okay, why not?" So I end up learning how to play like De La Riva guard, and I end up learning how to play like X guard, and all through open mats, which is amazing because, like, that's jiu-jitsu for you. You know what I mean? Like, if you come into my gym, it's going to be cool. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm going to teach you something. And that went on for a few months. And then around September of 2016, it was like September of 2017. So the open mats went on for about a year. You know what I mean? Because that's how I learned how to play guard real good. Was at Genesis Jiu Jitsu, and I learned how to do heel hooks there too, man.
That's the path
You know what I'm
to
saying?
the dark side.
And out views, man. You know what I mean? Teaching a wrestler a heel hook is deadly. So in September of 2017, my buddy stops going to these open mats with me, and I'm like, "Hey, man, what are you doing?" And he's like, I'm going to this place called Sloth Brazilian Jiu Jitsu in Euless, Texas. You know what I mean? But we didn't say Euless, Texas. We just said Sloth Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. It's right down the street. And at this point, like, I was with Sarah, you know what I mean? I'm living at Sarah's mom's house. I got a job, you know what I mean? I got
fiance.
It's your fiance? Sarah's your fiance?
Yeah, Sarah's my fiance. That is like the angel in my eye. She's like my backbone, my support, my best friend. We can literally talk about anything, and she knows like everything that I just told you.
Now.
She does now, yeah, or she will like tomorrow morning.
She's in recovery too, so we end up meeting at these recovery meetings. And she's actually got more clean time than I do, and this is hilarious to throw it out there. Her clean date is 4/20. Which is just hilarious, you know what I mean? Because that's like the ironic, national pot holiday. Yeah. So she knows all this shit, and it's crazy because at this point I come into Sloth Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and they only did gi. So I ended up going to my parents' house and finding like one of my brother's gis. That he had bought me back when I was like 17. It was this black Venom gi. It's an A3. I still have it today. It shrunk so much over the years. So I don't wear it to like tournaments or anything because it's cheating. But I ended up throwing on this gi and I ended up throwing on his white belt. You know what I mean? And I ended up coming in here and I'm hitting De La Riva sweeps and single leg X sweeps and I'm getting everyone in this straight ankle foot lock. And I'm hitting omoplatas and triangles on every single person in the entire gym. And the professor, Nathan Halford, comes up to me and he slaps my wrist and he bumps me. And I was like, I'm going to get you in a triangle choke. And he's like, what the fuck's this white belt telling me? And I get him in a triangle choke, man. And I choke him out the first day. And I'll never forget this because he's sitting there with this guy named Coy who's a purple belt. And I fucked up the purple belt for 6 minutes too. And they're sitting there like, dude, you're not a white belt, man. Like, how long have you been training? And I tell them the story of how I started wrestling. I'd done a bunch of wrestling, you know what I mean? And then I got into like MMA and I was doing no-gi and Muay Thai and all that kind of stuff. And I found a home, you know, and Nathan was like, man, you should do this tournament. I don't want you to compete at white belt. I want you to compete at blue belt. And if you win first place, I'll give you the blue belt. And I was like, what tournament is it, man? Where do I get signed up? I like that color belt. You know what I'm saying? And I get signed up for the IBJJF Dallas Open in September of like 2017. It was either September or October. And at this point, like, I can't do the heel hook in the gi. So one of the brown belts I was training with teaches me how to do a straight ankle lock. And I'm hitting the straight ankle lock on everyone in Sloth BJJ. You know what I mean? Left and right, going straight from De La Riva to single leg X to, you know, sit down sweep to, you know what I mean? Then I'm hitting my straight ankle lock. And I go into this IBJJF tournament. And I think there was like 13 or 14 people in the middle heavyweight division at the time at blue belt. And I ended up getting 3 submissions in a row at the blue belt level, all with the straight ankle lock.
Nice.
Yeah, dude, it's a sneaky setup. So I let them pull guard. They get to close guard, you know what I mean? And I go to pass close guard and then just sit back into Ashigarami and hit my straight ankle lock. And it's so simple and fundamental that it works at even the highest level. I've hit that on brown belts and black belts, and it works. Even though I do like the De La Riva footlock better than just a traditional straight ankle lock, that straight ankle lock out of that guard pass is like textbook. It works almost 9 out of 10 times.
Yeah, I have to say, we have a guy at our gym that does that all the time. Actually, Brian and I train at the same gym, and William Paget used to love. He does it a little less because he's progressing a little bit into different zones right now, I guess, of jiu-jitsu, but he used to pull that straight ankle lock on everybody. And I remember hearing stories about people going and competing and pulling a straight ankle lock and having their coaches yell at them because the person would just grab onto their gi and kind of sit up on top of them. Yeah. But man,
trying to do that with Will doesn't work.
No, if you know how to do it properly, it's mean.
Yeah.
Oh man, you don't even need two hands to finish it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's deadly, especially if you have a De La Riva footlock. Oh my God, you're breaking someone's shin in half. Shout out to Professor Kyle Terra for being one of the first guys to ever hit that shit. That De La Riva footlock's awesome. But so check it out. I end up entering this jiu-jitsu tournament. And the cool thing about this is like I'm still going to these recovery meetings and everything. But at this point, I don't understand this, but jiu-jitsu had really like saved my life. Because I had went to the meetings before whenever I got out of rehab, but I always went back to using drugs. You know, both times, whenever I went to Grapevine Valley Hope and whenever I went down to Houston in the watershed. But that time after I got out and I was really serious about it, even though I didn't go looking for something, I found something. And that something was Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Well, it was your new obsession, right?
Oh, man. I was off to the races.
Rather than the drugs, he took to jiu-jitsu as your new obsession.
Yeah, I did. I took to it really well. You know what I mean? So let's fast forward a little bit. I've been competing really heavily for the past year and a half since September of 2017. I got my blue belt after winning a bronze medal at that IBJJF tournament. Then I go on to compete at all the local tournaments, you know, AGF, NAGA, this, that, another Dallas Open. And every tournament, you know, I'm getting gold, I'm getting silver, I'm winning. But I'm winning like every match by submission. So right now, I think my record is like 31 with like 10 or 11 losses. But I have like 28 or 29 submissions as a blue belt. So I'm wrecking people. And something happens around February of 2018 at my gym. And we start these 6 a.m. classes.
I noticed that on your Facebook page, and I think you're insane and crazy. That is really early in the morning to be doing jiu-jitsu and rolling and choking people out.
So yeah, that is kind of funny that you say that. So at this point, you know, in January and, you know, September, November, October, whatever the months are, September, October, November, December, January, I'm just training in the afternoons, and on the nights that I'm not training to go into open mats, I'm running around. And I got a daughter, you know what I'm saying? So, like, I'm never home to watch my daughter because when I'm not at jiu-jitsu, I'm sleeping. And when I'm not sleeping, I'm at work making money. You know what I mean? I got a fiance. I got a daughter. And these 6 a.m. classes run around. So I'm like, you know, I'm going to try a 6 a.m. class. You know what I mean? This coach seems pretty cool. And we started off with Monday, Wednesday classes. And I'm going to these 6 a.m. classes, and Sarah finally like draws the line. She's like, Josh, you can't do 2 a days. Pick one or the other.
I like her already.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what I mean? So I end up picking the 6 a.m. classes. The cool thing happened. I started coaching the Friday class. So I became an assistant coach in March of 2018. And then I made it was kind of like Renegade. I kind of went like Rambo, like Rogue, you know what I'm saying? I started doing these wrestling classes with my college wrestling buddy and I, Alfonso Kaya, on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And we'd just come in here and do like 200 double legs. You know what I mean? We'd just kick ass for a whole hour and then go to work. And then our brown belt coach wanted to learn how to wrestle, you know, because he's got some judo experience. He's a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But, you know, his takedowns were pretty shitty, man. And he comes to this wrestling class, and we're just, like, throwing him around. And then we get, like, another person to come in. And then, like, our brown belt coach is throwing everybody around, you know what I mean? So he learns how to wrestle fast. But the thing about wrestling is, from my personal opinion, people like no-gi better than they like wrestling. So I've had more success with teaching no-gi on Tuesdays and Thursdays instead of just teaching wrestling, which kind of bums out my buddy Alfonso because he's about to go wrestle for the Island Games. He's going to go wrestle for Tonga here in a couple months, which is pretty cool. So he's a really badass wrestler. But, you know, like it's jiu-jitsu is a business. And of course you want more people to come. So we started teaching Nogi. But so for the past year, and then our brown belt coach left too. So he ended up going to like another gym. So now I'm coaching 5 days a week, at 6 a.m. Monday through Friday. I'm still going to open mats on Sunday. Saturday, you know what I mean? Like I'm running around doing like 5Ks and like 500 push-ups and all this kind of stuff. So I'm training like 6, 7 days a week at this point. But what I wanted to talk about to kind of wrap this up was not only how jiu-jitsu saved my life, but how I balanced doing all of this with 3 kids and a wife and working 55 to 60 hours a week.
Hmm.
So I have to moderate what I do in my life, and I had to find this balance. Okay, so I stick to a real strict schedule, even like meal prep wise, you know what I mean? For breakfast, it's a protein, it's a carb, and it's a vegetable. For lunch, it's a protein, it's a carb, and it's a vegetable. For dinner, it's a protein, it's a vegetable, and it's a fat. And then in between, you know, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, I'm drinking protein shakes. So that schedule's done. Now, 6 a.m. classes, what I do is I wake up at 4 a.m. I go run a 5K, or I go and do like 500 push-ups. I have off and on days. And then after jujitsu, and that's before class. That's around 4:30 or 5 a.m. And then I head to work. I do homework for about 30 minutes to 45 minutes before work. I clock in at work around 8:30 or 9 a.m. I work, you know what I mean, like a 9, 10, sometimes 11-hour shift. I get off work, come home to a wife who's been at home with the kids all day long. You know what I mean? So I start taking care of the kids. And then we were in bed by like 9 or 9:30 at night. I do it all over again the next day.
Wow. That's a good routine.
Yeah. And it sounds like an obsession.
And it sounds like an obsession. A good
A
obsession.
good obsession, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's true.
It's true.
Your personality is dictating it, and it's, you know, you're replacing all the bad with good. So your life is better now. Am I wrong?
No, man, my life's amazing. Like, I never thought I would get to this point. But, like, of course, I never thought I would have gone through drug addiction. Like, there's no 5-year-old out there right now being like, oh, you know, I want to be a meth head when I grow
No
up.
kidding. Yeah.
You know, like, they're all like, I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a police officer. You know, I want to be a teacher. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. You know, some kids are like, I want to be a painter. I want to be a musician. But nobody says I want to be a drug addict when I grow up. You know what I mean? So I'm a firm believer that God put me through everything that I went through in my entire life to become the man I am today. The person who has the ability, the attributes, and characteristic to man up and do what he doesn't want to do when it has to be done, because that is the discipline required to accomplish dreams. And to accomplish any dream, you only need 3 things. You need to know what, why, and how. What do you want? Why do you want it? And how are you going to get it?
I was about to ask you, but you literally just answered my question. For people who are in a situation or in a similar situation and don't know how to get out of it, but I think you just answered that. I think there are a lot of people who are in bad situations that are having a hard time figuring out, how do I get out of it, and don't see that light at the end of the tunnel. And I think people can't just assume that it'll eventually happen and it's just something that'll come out of the blue. You need to make it happen at some point. It's not just some shining light that's gonna come down on you and take you out of a bad situation. You need to figure your shit out. Yeah. And it might take you a month, it might take you a year to figure it out, or it might take you 10 years to figure it out, but eventually you have to figure your shit out. And it's the only person that it's going to, you know, that's going to realize where you need to go and what you need to do is you. And I think you figured that out, and you figured it out quickly enough to be able to get yourself out of a bad situation and put yourself in a good situation
before it got too late. Yeah. For sure.
For real, man, because, you know, like, of course I'd smoked pot from like, you know, 15 to 20, but I did hard drugs, you know, for only like 2 years of my life. There's some people that go through it for a lot longer than I did. And it's crazy because I still work a recovery program today. And for anyone out there who is struggling with the disease of addiction, I want you to know that, like, not only do I love you, but I want you to know that, like, you never have to use again. Like, even if you want to use, you never have to use again, because addiction is made up of two things: obsession and compulsion. And obsession is that fixed idea that takes me back time and time again to a particular drug or some substitute to capture the ease or comfort that I once knew. And compulsion is like, once having started that process of one fix, one pill, one drink, I can't stop through sheer willpower alone. You know what I mean? And it's crazy because the disease of addiction doesn't discriminate whether I'm the junkie on the street corner snatching purses or whether I'm the sweet old lady lying to 2 or 3 doctors for legal prescriptions. We all suffer our disease and our destruction the exact same way, a bag at a time, a few pills at a time, or a bottle at a time until we die. And it's crazy because sometimes a relapse might be the decisive factor that brings about a more rigorous application of the program. And the program can work for you if you work it. But at the end of the day, you have to do it for yourself.
And I was just going to say I've heard many people say about addiction how you don't really get rid of the addiction, I guess, gene, I guess you would call it. You replace it with something else, right? You kind of distract yourself so you don't get back into the bad, damaging addiction. So in your case, it's like jiu-jitsu, like you said. So you're surrounding yourself with, these positive people, positive atmosphere. It's not something that you compete, but you're not competing with someone else to get better than them. You're constantly competing to get better than you were. So every day you try to get better and better at it. And, like I said, you got a great squad. I'm sure that you're pretty close with the guys at the gym with, and all this, I guess, helps keep the addiction at bay. Do you feel that way, or?
I totally agree, man. Like, if I didn't have jiu-jitsu, there's no doubt in my mind that I'd be like out there using.
That was my next question. I was going to say, do you ever fear, like, if ever you stop doing it, or if you get lazy, for a couple days, and do you feel it kind of itching, or maybe you haven't even, gone through that?
I was about to say, sorry, Josh, I was about to say, just to cut in, and I'm about to save your ass so you can thank me later. But a lot of guys who do jiu-jitsu put a lot of weight on jiu-jitsu, on how it saved their life and this and that. So yes, I know you're about to answer that. Yes, jiu-jitsu is kind of helping me out, and if I didn't have it, I'd probably be in a bad situation. But I'm pretty sure that the woman that you're with is helping that situation out too, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So shout out to Sarah Marie Himmelgarn, man. She is like the best woman a man could ever have.
I just added her on Facebook. I sent her a friend request. She better accept me. I'm going to be very angry if she doesn't.
So check this out. I'm still at the gym sitting here looking at a belt I won in an underground submission series. But so I don't know how she is so good at raising kids and cleaning the house and doing the dishes and doing the laundry. Because, like, whenever I give her, like, her time and she goes out with her friends, which isn't very often, so she is very, like, principled woman, you know what I mean? Like, she applies a lot of responsibility in her life. But whenever I give her the opportunity to, like, go out and do stuff, and I'm set at home being a dad, it's crazy, man. Like, these kids are just running around, they're yelling, they're screaming. I gotta feed them dinner, I gotta give them a bath, you know what I mean? Like, we got a dog, so the dog's running around wagging its tail, knocking the kids over. I don't understand how she does it.
I understand you. We all have, I think Brian and I both have wives like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wives like that. No, definitely.
I have only one more question, and then I'll let Ray kind of do what they do. I just wanted to ask Josh about your family. I mean, your sister, your brother, your parents. Do you still keep in touch with all of them?
Yeah. So my sister she's one class away from getting her bachelor's degree at the University of North Texas.
Amazing.
And she also is graduating from some hair academy because she likes doing hair too. And I'm going to her graduation on Sunday. My brother is a amateur mixed martial artist with a record of 1-1. So he
Very good.
beat the shit out of the dude the first round.
And then got his ass kicked.
No, the first fight he just beat the shit out of the dude, TKO'd him. And then in the second fight, he just didn't cut weight correctly.
Okay.
So he had to cut like 8 pounds the day before.
That's rough.
And he was fighting at 145. So, going from, 153 down to 145 in a night.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've never cut weight before, is crazy. So he goes out there and he ends up getting tapped out in the second fight against someone he totally could have beat if he would have prepared correctly.
Okay.
But he's a bouncer at a local strip club. You know what I mean? And he's a mixed martial artist, so he's constantly training.
Okay. And your parents?
My dad, you know what I mean? He's freaking awesome. They're both still clean. You know what I'm saying? He is like the operations manager at a company out in Fort Worth, and my mom is also in another company out in Fort Worth, and she's doing really good too. She's like an accountant.
That's amazing.
And you guys are close. Everybody sees each other.
Yeah. Like we get together, probably like once a month, and let them play with the kids and all that kind of stuff. Like,
great.
We just get together and do like barbecues or I really like dropping the kids off with the grandparents.
I don't like doing that.
So that Sarah and I can go watch a movie, so for the grandparents watching this, like, we're going to be dropping them off very shortly. I don't know if this week or next week or the weekend after that, but please watch them.
Josh, we're definitely at the end of we've been at an hour 30. I think this is one of the longest podcasts that we've had.
Probably.
But I have to say that I honestly feel that this is one of the best podcasts that we've had. I'm warning you right now, I probably will end up in Texas knocking at your front door at some point in time, because I definitely do want to meet you in person.
Yeah,
so it's definitely going to happen. I am an active competitor, and even though I have a giant sign that's saying I will never do a points competition ever again and will only do sub only, if a points competition comes up in Texas and I know that you're there, I might end up there.
Check it out. Actually, I got invited to a 190-pound submission-only invitational in Oklahoma. It's, I think, the second weekend or the third weekend of July. They're the super fights, sub-only, no time limit. So I ended up winning last year. I went 12-1 for the day with 11 submissions. I ended up winning the purple belt and brown belt no-gi division. I ended up submitting like fucking everyone, basically. And I ended up winning this belt and this title of submission artist. Now, the thing about this belt is only one belt was handed out for 250 athletes. And I was that one athlete.
That's great.
Wow, that's cool.
So I got invited to a – so if I had a role model, if I had to pick one guy, one role model for jiu-jitsu, my role model – sorry, Professor Nathan Halpern. My role model would be Kyle Short out of Keller, Texas. This dude is about to be big. I don't know if y'all know his name yet, but this dude's going to make some milestones. Like, I don't know how he does it, but Kyle Short, shout out to you. So he invited me to the submission-only invitational. It's a 16-man tournament, sub-only. So I'm a little nervous if my first fight goes like 45 minutes and I end up beating the dude who's like the second best guy in the tournament. And then I got to fight another guy right after that.
Is it gi or no gi?
It's no gi. So they got two brackets, 155 and 190, 16-man open.
Okay.
If it does go 45 minutes, just have a banana and some coconut water. You'll be good.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. And I'm definitely adding Kyle Short currently on Facebook out of Haltom, Texas, and I'm getting on that card. Screw it. I'm coming for you, Josh.
Totally. So check it out. You need to reach out to Kyle and get him on your podcast because that dude's going to be famous within the next 5 years.
Okay, cool.
Like I'm talking about.
He's a brown belt, right? I think.
Yeah, he's a brown belt. He's under Brandon Quick's association.
Okay, that's cool. Awesome. Well, Josh, man, I really appreciate you telling your story, being on the podcast. I have to say, it's really got in my. I still have 1,000 questions for you, and I can really like make this go an extra hour, which I'm not going to. I think I'm definitely gonna say it or save it for another time. And Brian has a podcast coming shortly, and I think he has definitely a lot of questions coming your way or might be interested in speaking to you again. Go, Brian.
So yeah, Josh. So I haven't kicked it off yet, but I'm building a list of guests and interviews now, and I think you would be a great addition to that. And it's not a jiu-jitsu podcast; it's just a conversation podcast. So talk about different issues, and I like to talk about stuff like psychology and social behavior and stuff like that. So I think you would be a great guest. So if you're up for it, we would have another conversation, not unlike this one, but hopefully a little bit more in depth about the non-jiu-jitsu part of it.
Yep.
Would you be
totally, man? Like, I believe that. So there's a saying, and the saying is, "You only have one life." Well, I don't like that. I think we live life every day. You know what I mean? So, like, if I wake up today and I have a dream, I'm going to ask myself, those 3 questions. What, why, and how. What do I want? Why do I want it? And how am I going to get it? You know what I'm saying? So with that mentality, I'm able to accomplish things I never thought I could accomplish. You know what I mean? Like at my job right now, dude, I've gotten like 2 promotions within less than 2 years, and I've gotten over $4 an hour raise just because of the principles behind like jujitsu and working hard. You know what I'm saying? And showing up whenever you don't want to show up because that's what you're supposed to do. You know what I mean? Like, I could talk about philosophical point of views like all day long. Like I annoy the shit out of my wife with that stuff.
Well, that's our job as husbands.
There you go. That's
or
awesome.
Or
fiance, yeah, exactly. Well, Josh, man, thanks very much for being a part of the podcast. I really appreciate your time. We definitely went over the 1 hour mark that I promised you, but man, your story is definitely inspiring, and hopefully it'll inspire a lot of people. Check Josh out on Facebook, Joshua Meredith. He's on Facebook. Follow him on Instagram, and yeah, definitely soft jiu-jitsu, something to check out also. And if I am in Texas, I'm promising myself that I'm going down to Texas due to the fact that we have lots of guests from Texas, and I have to end up there in 2019. Josh, man, if you're around, I'm going to send you a message, and we're definitely going to we're definitely going to speak soon.
So check it out real quick. Just a shout out to everybody. If you're ever in the DFW area, the Dallas-Fort Worth area, we do not charge a drop-in fee. I was listening to one of your podcasts, and you were like, please don't charge a drop-in
job,
fee.
man.
I'll bring the $20, but it'd be a lot cooler if I got to keep it. So we don't charge a drop-in fee. Come by. If you're in for the week, come train for a week. You know what I mean? Like, we're really friendly here. We're not going to fuck you up on your first day either, but your second day,
all bets are off. How far are you from San Antonio?
Oh, man, we're about 5 hours.
Oh, shit. Okay, never mind.
All right, so maybe not
4
San
hours?
Antonio.
No. So I'll be going to San Antonio for work at some point. So.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. All right, man. Well, thanks very much for your time, Josh. And like I said, everyone can go check him out on his social media. And I appreciate your time, buddy.
All right, brother. Y'all have an amazing night. It was good talking to you guys.
Great talking to you too, buddy.
You've been listening to Let's Talk Jiu-Jitsu with Raymond Terrence. Go follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube page. Turn on notifications and press that like button. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the mats.